talk about sustainable development goals. We will talk about how the fashion and lifestyle industry can contribute to these things. So I would like to welcome all the panelists to the stage. We have Carrie Bannigan, who's the Executive Director of the Fashion Impact Fund. Round of applause. We have Safia Minay. She's a leading social entrepreneur and the founder of the sustainable fashion brand People Tree, and she's a fashion activist. She will be here on remote via our screen. Here we have Henning Siedentop. He's the CEO of the fashion brand Mela, formerly known as Mela Wear, now goes by Mela. And we have Juliane Ziegler. She's the representative of the Germany, Austria, and Switzerland branch of the Global Organic Textile Standard, which is one of the labels that I told you about that checks whether a company is sustainable. Okay. I don't know if we have Safia on the screen. Yes, lovely. We can see her. This panel will be about sustainable development goals. I want, first of all, to give everyone here on this panel a chance to quickly introduce themselves and then maybe give us a brief statement on what needs to be done to improve sustainability in the fashion industry. Maybe we can start with Juliane.
Well, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Yes, perfect. Well, thank you, and thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and even more excited to see the room being so filled, which actually shows that sustainability just gained momentum. And I think we are on a good path. I also believe this is only the beginning. So the rocket just took off, basically. It's still a long way to go, but how I believe change can be created is exactly by formats like this, by exchanging ideas, experiences along the industry, like inviting different stakeholders and, yeah, just exchanging knowledge and expertise. And I think we need more of this. So, thanks.
Thank you. Carrie Bannigan.
Hello, everybody.
Quick introduction and your statement for what needs to be done.
Hello, everybody. I'm Carrie Bannigan, Executive Director of the Fashion Impact Fund and co-founder of the United Nations Conscious Fashion and Lifestyle Network. My work is all focused on bridging the gap between the Sustainable Development Goals and the sector. What I think needs to be done now is a lot more collaboration over competition and really, really bringing together education and partnerships. That's what I want to see. Can I also say a little bit about what are the SDGs for this?
You will, I will. I want to give Henning an opportunity. Maybe we switch it up. Where are we right now when it comes to sustainability, and what do you do very quickly again, in addition to the things that I've said?
Sure, yeah, very quickly. I mean, you already mentioned it. I'm the founder of Mela, formerly known as Mela Wear. Head office is close to Frankfurt, like 200 kilometers north of here. And actually, 10, 15 years back, I've seen the worst in the industry, not only in fashion, in textiles, in construction industry, in previous jobs. And I immediately knew that's not what I want to do for my future life, and apparently fashion textiles came into my life. It was coincidence, and yeah, we launched the world's first and only fair trade organic certified backpacks or sneakers. That's where we stand out the crowd, and I think we are still somewhat in the beginning in that way that yeah, we should stop doing things less bad but really good. Actually, we still on the surface and not really into doing things from the beginning right, rather than doing them slightly better. I think that's where we are right now.
Still on the surface. I will give you the opportunity to quickly explain what the Sustainable Development Goals are, and then we'll hear from Safia Minay.
Okay, brilliant. Just with this talk being so focused around the Sustainable Development Goals, or is also known as the SDGs, for those that are not familiar, these are 17 goals that were adopted by the United Nations member states in 2015 that provide a blueprint of how we can have a better world and future for people and planet. And they are focused on anything from climate through to water, pollution, animals, gender equality, and education. And I know each of us will dive into it with our perspective throughout this chat, but I just really wanted to share what the SDGs are for those that are new to this conversation.
Perfect. And again, like I said, at the to-do walls or at the SDG mobile outside, you can also further intensify your knowledge on those 17 UN related goals if you really want to get the specifics of them, because we will talk about them, but obviously it's many. So now we have Safia Mene, who is digitally with us. Maybe you can briefly tell us also where we are as far as you're concerned, as far as sustainability, and then you will give us a input that we could work with. You've prepared like a little presentation. This will lead into our discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to be with you, and I'm so sorry that I'm not with you all in Frankfurt today. My name is Safia Mene, and I started my sustainable fashion journey about 30 years ago. And I think it was very much, you know, as many are tuned in today, coming at it as an ethical consumer, thinking, you know, I want to be part of the solution, not the problem, that really brought me to founding People Tree. And so, sorry, I'm just trying to move my slides, forgive me. So building sustainable and fair trade supply chains happened 25, 30 years ago, and during that, I visited garment factory workers, producers, suppliers in the conventional fashion industry to try to understand how we needed to change the fashion industry, what were the problems. And with that, I launched People Tree in Japan, and then 10 years later in Europe, with some great stockists, certainly around the DACH area and Benelux. And the brand really was about organic and fair trade, organic and sustainable materials, because the last thing we wanted was to be building a brand based on plastics. We know now that we have 83% of water is polluted with microfibers. So that can be avoided by using natural materials. So we built direct relationships with the farmers and with the producers to really understand what their problems were, what would help them to go organic and to scale their businesses and their projects. And I think for me, I've been passionate about soil for years, understanding that organic meant that we were reducing water consumption, but at the same time paying fair trade and organic premiums so that farmers could invest in their own communities, as well as indigenous seed banks, and help other farmers to go organic. For me, that was really very, very important. So People Tree was the first company to use the GOTS organic mark for a product that was produced in the developing world, and also to create, pilot the World Fair Trade Organization Fair Trade supply chain mark for WFTO. And building on that was not just the organic and natural materials, biodegradable materials, but also wanting to use handicrafts like hand weaving, hand embroidery, hand knitting, in order to generate high incomes in rural areas for largely female-based groups. And sharing, if you like, building that deep trading relationship so that producers could also come and visit us in Tokyo, in Berlin, in London, to understand the trading relationship, to create, if you like, that direct relationship between customer and producer. And so coming back to the theme of the talk today, Sustainable Development Goals, for me, it was always, if you like, the 18th goal that was missing, that one that was about campaigning, about communicating and the PR, so that people knew about the Sustainable Development Goals. So I can't tell you how pleased I am to join you today. So in 2019, I joined Extinction Rebellion and the school strikes, because I think they were very key in actually rising up the agenda, the need for urgent climate action. And the animation I'm showing you at the moment shows the Earth and its global heating over the last 200 years. As you can see, despite all of the COPs, we're still heading for 3 degrees, with the London Stock Exchange planning for 4 degrees above pre-industrialized levels. And we need to redesign the whole economy, the whole way that we live, and the fashion industry, which some argue is between 4 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and on a trajectory to 25% by 2050 of total greenhouse gas emissions. We need to redesign everything to fit within the ecological ceiling and the social foundation. And this is actually a different way of looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. If you look at the Human Climate Niche Report, you can read that by 2070, on the current trajectory, with the extreme climate events that we're facing now, even here in Europe, if you look at what's happening in India and Bangladesh, it's terrible, terrifying, that the increase of uninhabitable land will result in further biodiversity loss and food security, meaning that more than 3 billion people will be on the move. So I spoke with fashion leaders, about 100 of them, in writing my new book, Regenerative Fashion. And what they echoed was, like me, this fear of this emergency that we face, and this desire to share best practice to make everyone part of the solution. So we put together Fashion Declares, which is a movement, a bottom-up movement. I'm delighted that some of the panelists also were advisors and members of Fashion Declares. And many fashion companies, large and small, came together behind a vision of 5 key goals to speak out for the urgent action that we need to create that social and just transition, to decarbonize businesses rapidly, and to radically create transparency so that consumers, citizens can be part of the change. So that in a nutshell is the project that I'm working on at the moment, and very much hoping that, like many of you, citizens who are caring are also looking at reducing their fashion consumption if they're buying new, making sure that's created through fair trade and sustainable channels, but really switching to second-hand. So thank you very, very much for allowing me to present and give a bit of a context to the urgency that faces the fashion industry and the economy today. Thank you.
Thank you, Safia, for this context. I want to add some information to this. So actually, since the year 2000, the production worldwide of textile has doubled. This has only been 22 years ago. It, on average, takes 2,700 liters to produce a t-shirt. So, and then also having heard the information about how climate is changing that Safia has presented to us, I want to know from you, Carrie Bannigan, to be honest, this makes me very pessimistic. Do you even think we can actually still make it? Can we reach these sustainable development goals? Is this possible? And if so, what needs to be done? How do we need to speed it up to get this process going?
This is a very loaded question, but it's a very good one. The reality is 8 years is not long. Even with everything that the industry is coming together, accelerating things, business, organizations, and global citizens. But what we also have to look at is there was a lack of progress before the pandemic. And then in the pandemic, what we saw was unprecedented disruption for society, businesses, and so forth. And with that, we saw how already vulnerable and marginalized communities were hurt, and then they've been hurt even more. And people were talking about in the pandemic, oh, it's wonderful, look what's happening. The environment's getting a chance to rest. But in that, we were forgetting, but what about the people? You can look up the Pay Up campaign that was run by Remake, and how factories were cancelling orders and just garment workers were being forgotten and had no rights. And so when we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, we can't just pick one goal and say, I'm going to work on that and this will be okay. They're very interlinked. And the fashion industry is one of very few sectors that actually touches all 17 goals. Right now, actually negatively. And so through forums like this and education and certifications, this is where we have to really see a lot of acceleration and action, but really we need to see a lot of resources and finance available. The solutions exist. The solutions, the systems, and the strategies are there. They're on this panel, they're in this room, they're in the booths here today, but without collaboration and that's government down. This is not on citizens, and it's not just on brands and organizations. So I, like you, am also pessimistic. What can we make happen in 8 years? 8 years can't be this just deadline. This has got to continue. This can't stop. And we also need to take every action that we can, from citizens through to pushing our governments, legislation, and supporting the brands and businesses that are doing good.
Thank you so much. I want to later touch on Mela and how, as a fashion brand, you try to incorporate these things. And I want to bring back Safia Mini, because you've presented to us all the ecological issues that come about if we don't drastically change the way we produce fashion. But also one of the goals is to reduce poverty. So this also comes with how humans have to work, what the working conditions are. So as I've understood, you've done you've done very deep research, you've written a whole book also called Slave to Fashion. So maybe you could quickly also add, because as Carrie Bennigan said, it's interlinked. So all these things are interlinked. Maybe you could touch on, like, how are the working conditions and how do you make sure these things are improved? How do you actually know that the people who work in my companies will be treated justly or close to that?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. I mean, Kerry's passionate about the social side as well as the environmental side, and I'm just so grateful. You know, we have to start paying living wages, living incomes, and you know, that is actually the key to also starting to reduce the production quantities. So, you know, for example, if we take the price of a garment, the labor cost might be 3 to 5%. We know that we can increase that quite substantially, actually. I mean, with handcrafted product at People Tree, we could increase that labour component to 20%, even 25%, and still sell it well. But the point is, we need to start paying living wage. And I think with the EU human rights due diligence, we will start to be able to push for that as being a minimum. We need to level the playing field so that we don't have a fashion industry that is just built on modern day slavery, which is the case.
Thank you so much. I will speak to you now, Henning Siedentop, and then I can get back to you, Juliane, because you can already prepare, because we talked about the EU goals of what they've published now, what needs to be done, then you can maybe summarize that. But I want to quickly understand the things that we talked about now, so the minimum wage or the living wage that needs to be paid, and understanding that these things are interlinked with your brand, Mela, which they pride themselves on being sustainable. How does that work? Like, how do you make sure that every fabric, every stitch, everything that is being done to the clothes that I sell, I can actually approve and feel like, okay, people have had good working conditions?
Yeah, I mean, I would never say that's 100% perfect or that we do it in the ideal world, but I mean, before we started the company, we did a long research. I mean, the company was founded out of a university, which is known for being sustainable leader in Germany and at Leuphana near Hamburg. And we did a lot, like 2 years of research. And then we nailed it down to one fabric, to one fiber, which in the end of the day, we reduce complexity. So we don't want to offer the full range of fashion, what you can maybe get out of here, but we take one kind of fabric or fiber out of it, and then we try to make the best out of it. And we are certified by all the certificates that you can use for cotton, GOTS, Grüner Knopf, Fair Trade, Cotton, Fair Trade Textile Standard. That's the living wage project Safia is talking about. We are like pilot run or pilot partner in this project, and then we visit ourselves. Mela is Hindi, it means acting together. So it's not only one fiber, it's one country. We have dedicated ourselves to India. Beside the sneakers where we get the organic rubber, we are purely in one country, which is India. It's the world's largest producer for organic fair trade cotton at all. And they do from the fiber up to the final product to reduce also the kilometers where it travels. So we can ourselves travel down the entire supply chain, down the line, and we bring the suppliers together. So we make supplier conference where we invite all of them to meet. We go to the factories and visit them. We do on-site audits ourselves. We have a buying house in India itself, 5 people exclusively working for us. We use the certificates. And then last but not least, I mean, it's all about sustainability also means, okay, make the product good so that the people, it's good if we pay fair wages or better wages. But what if you give them plastic, recycled plastic or toxic materials to work on it, then they have something on their hand, in their skin, they breathe in and they die earlier, but maybe they have some more money, so you have to make sure that they also have a sustainable fiber or fabric in hand. So we send it to the labs, we use Swiss laboratories to test everything, and then in the end of the day to the consumer, I mean, we don't even display it yet, but all our garments have a unique tracking code where we can actually say, this cotton comes from this place, the ginner was there, the weaving was there, the dyeing was there, these are the test results. So we could display everything and make it open to the public, and in the end of the day, we can give it to any recycler or anyone who wants to do something out of it, because it's a monofiber, so we don't mix up. So it's a very complex thing. So you can only handle it if you reduce complexity by making and narrowing it down. And that's why we are maybe not that fashionable than other brands, but what we do it right. And that's what I meant in the beginning. Don't do too much, but do the right thing and not less bad, because that will not help us to reach the SDGs.
Thank you for your input and your insights. I want to bring Juliane Ziegler into this conversation. Now, you are responsible for making sure that the brands actually adhere to those rules when you hand out the label that lets people know, okay, this is Global Organic Textile Standard approved. So now I want to, like, you're sympathetic. I want to believe you and everything you say is right, but we need certificates and instances that check. So how do you do that? Like, how does this work? Somebody reaches out, or you check, actually, this sounds nice and dandy, but let me fly to India myself and see if these people live well, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm really impressed to see that holistic approach, and just, I think a certificate is one part, it's one pillar of being a sustainable brand. But so how does the whole scheme work? Basically, we would never fly to India ourselves. Like, I mean, me as a representative, I can provide the contacts, but then we have independent accredited certification bodies, and those are being accredited by us as well as by a different organization. So basically it's always 6 eyes looking at it, and then they would be approved to go into factories, to go into facilities, to check, okay, are the criteria compliant with what we say in the standard? So the idea is to also have that neutrality as much as possible, and a certain, like a third-party accreditation.
Okay.
So
we've seen, but it's like, you have people that they'll go there and then they'll see, how are the wages, how are the people living, have interviews, and then give you a report, and you can feel like, okay, approved, fail.
Yeah, well, basically the auditors, they go in, they check, which could be a day, it could be 2 days, it could be 3 days, it depends on the location, it depends on the size of the company, and then they have some checks are basically just file checking when it comes to environmental criteria. When it comes to checking or assessing the social part, this does involve interviews, this does involve unannounced conversations with the workers on site, without management being involved. So to keep it as neutral and as open for the workers to communicate if there is anything which is not going right. And wages. So as Safia mentioned, we do require the minimum wage right now in the standard. Maybe just to give an example how also living wage could be achieved in the future. And we do require companies, however, to calculate that wage gap. So how? Sorry,
because every country is like, is it the German minimum wage that the Indian worker would get, which would make sense to me if it's a German company, but is that actually the case, or what does that mean?
No, so basically when we're talking minimum wage or when we're talking living wage, we cannot set one standard from one country, which is then applied to other countries. So it's looked at, okay, so what is the situation in the country, and then there are benchmarks such as the Global Living Wage Coalition, and this is they basically calculated the living wages for certain countries, and then those companies can use those benchmarks to see, okay, what is what we are paying right now, and how big is the gap, and how can I work towards closing that gap. And if there's no benchmark available, then there's also Amfori, for instance, an organization which provides a template. So the companies then individually may calculate that gap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully at some point everybody, regardless which country they live in, will make the same money. I would like to know, the European Union has passed its new textile strategy. It's a very lengthy read. I suggest you, if you get the time, you read it. But we are not fashion experts, so obviously we have people like you who will be able to read it and have more of a context. So maybe you could quickly assess what is it about, and then where do you see the pros and the cons in this textile strategy?
Okay, I'll try and make it very quick and just touch upon the main features. Basically, the whole strategy aims to create a greener sector, a more competitive sector, and also to create more innovation. And how does it do that? It wants more durable products, and those products are being more durable by using repairable materials or by using recyclable materials. So this is a main feature. And also to make the fibers recyclable. No hazardous chemicals shall be used, and it also looks at the way the fibers are produced or the products are produced along the supply chain. It says no to fast fashion. That's the idea, to avoid disposal of fashion by creating durable products, to also have a design guide available for products on how to meet those criteria. And yeah, to avoid landfill, it prohibits certain disposal of textile. It aims to, let's say, it's still in the process, disposal of textiles. And yeah, and with that comes then increasing capacities for recycling. So those are one of the main features. And I believe it's a start again, and it's a good way to go forward. However, I see a lack in terms of organic fibers are not really considered in the whole process. So the focus is really put on the whole recycling aspect. And when it comes to recycling, it's such a complex process. So it sounds very easy, like, okay, you have a product, you can just recycle it. You may, if you have like Henning said, monofiber. It might be possible, but even that is there's still so much research that needs to go into it.
So you're saying it's a lot about recycling actual fabric that is already out there instead of creating a fabric that would already be more sustainable because it's organic. So this is something that they should have touched on more.
Yes.
How can you produce something that doesn't create as much waste? As far as clothes are concerned,
I think organic should be part of it. I mean, I'm not saying that recycling is the wrong path, but we also need to look at how can recycling be facilitated. And products, they don't just consist usually of just one fiber, and then they have accessories. It's multiple fibers going into a product, so it's a very complex process.
Perfect. Henning, you want to add something to this? Okay.
Actually, just a small thing. I think it's very important to really look at it, how the actual law or strategy will look like, because you can make products so durable that they will last forever and will destroy our planet, or you can have everything in a cycle, and even trash you can bring in a cycle and use it again and again. I mean, we have just seen the recent cases, how bad ocean plastic and recycled plastic is to the environment, and how much toxic it can be, and how it's just a greenwashing and marketing tool. So it's really important that not the big industry just takes this for granted because it's the most or cheapest fiber to use recycled fiber. That's the main reason everybody's using it, because it's the cheapest yarn and fabric available, not because it's the most environmental friendly yarn. And I mean, of course, going with a cradle-to-cradle design approach, making monofibers or fibers that can actually be not downcycled but recycled on a good scale. It can be out of oil or crude oil, but then it has to be really on a high level. It's possible, but it's not actually used. Basically, what's seen in the moment is only downcycling. So we really have to be aware that it's not just another industry greenwashing deal. We are just keeping trash in the cycle instead of doing the things right from the beginning. And that's, I think, what you mentioned by looking at organic inputs rather than non-organic inputs in the beginning.
Thanks so much. I would finally give you the opportunity to briefly also speak on, because the fund that you work for, they want to support women entrepreneurs. So maybe you can touch on why that is necessary in this industry, and then I would give you guys, so prepare quickly to ask some questions. I would give you the opportunity because we're running out of time.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep it quick. I think the reality is when you look across women entrepreneurs in all sectors and just women in business is they just need more access to media, marketing and money. And with that, as I'd mentioned earlier, these solutions already exist. And women just need access to this. They don't just need a seat at the table. They need to be heard. They need to have the equal opportunities. And there's incredible things going on out there. You see it on the floor here today. And the reality is, when you also look at the fashion industry, as Safia was mentioning earlier, this is an industry that is very reliant on female garment workers. This is a $2.4 trillion, sorry, I don't know the exchange, but dollar industry, and it employs over 300 million people over the value chain. And people think, wow, that's incredible, fashion's such a big employer. But unfortunately, around, I think it's up to 75 million in reports that are the garment workers, and 80% of them are young women. And, you know, when we talk about entrepreneurs, we're all thinking the businesswoman out there doing her hustle, but so many of these artisans that are out there in the world doing incredible work, they are entrepreneurs to us too. They are the ones keeping the fashion industry on one part alive. And so we need to ensure that we're valuing what's going on. And it's not just a supply chain, it's a human chain. And so much of that is reliant on women.
Okay, thank you so very much. Like short questions, anything? Because I promised, so I have to give you. Okay, yes, I'll take two. So you two. Okay, no, you can ask. Oh, the microphone hasn't been handed to you. Well, then you'll be next up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Olga. I'm from Russia, and I really want to say to all of you, it's so amazing to be here, and it's very not time for counseling any culture. I'm from a sustainable movement called Go Circle, and I'm very open to collaborate because my country is one of the biggest territories of the planet, and there are people who understand it, and we are very open. So, and my question is, fashion can be not just clothing, it can be experience. So what do you see, any sharing or like renting or I don't know, like a community building and any other experiences which are not actual pieces, which are not actual garments, we can use to grow this, to actually grow business, because every business want to grow, want to get more money, but at the same time we don't want to use more resources, and we don't want to be this species who kill all the other species because of growing. So what can we do in terms of not producing more? Yeah.
I will collect them because I want to get her question too, so then we can be quick with wrapping it up. Yes, Artie will hand you the microphone. Thank you so very much.
Hello, my name is Isabel, and I'm from Vienna, if this is important for anyone. My question is more, if it's a question, it's more like a thought thrown, because I've been to these discussions and into kind of these topics since a long time, so it's not like something, oh, today is a good day for this. And I have the feeling, even if like there are the big companies, let's talk about luxury, they per piece, per bag, it's like 1.5 or 2,000 or 10 or whatever. Even these big ones, they don't produce anything fair trade or whatever. They made in Italy, but it's somewhere where Chinese workers from have their own little factory collage. How to put pressure or any form of importance if it's a free choice, kind of. I have the feeling the free choice makes everyone is like, yeah, we'll do it later because it sounds amazing. But it's when is this later coming? I'm not sure. So that's what my question is. We know all of this. how to kind of really put it into more of a now kind of, where's these kind of turning points in politics or brands or whatever kind of, yeah.
Thank you so much. It's kind of like Eurovision Song Contest, Austria, Russia, like in all countries. So I'll hand you the questions and you can answer. So I'll summarize. We've had how do we produce less? So how can we share, rent instead of buy and produce more, use the clothes that are already out there? And then how do you stigmatize companies that don't comply? Can you cancel them? Can you put pressure on them? Do we need to be more vicious, less compromising, and be like either like this or it's going to be forbidden? So those are the two questions. Carrie, I already see you have something to say, so go ahead.
This is a quick answer to both of you. So when you were asking Olga about experiences, I think that it's important to look at the renting, the sharing, the swapping, all of these models, but also it's important to look at the good businesses that are small, that are localized, that are independent, and are doing the work, because we do need to keep supporting our local economies. And so it's very important to ensure that we don't cancel brands that are creating, because they can also then, with good product, put back into the swapping and sharing economy when that time is right. And then to your question, statement, thought, I'm a huge advocate for policy and legislation, and I just want to see these companies get fined and jailed, but that's for another time. But I do think...
Because there are companies like Burberry burning
Yes.
$23 million, pounds, whatever, of their things not to be like sold down or
Yeah.
like because it's not good for the image.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of these horror stories, but while there's also the legislations to be put in place that we are starting to see across the world coming together, it's also important that we have to have incentives for those that are doing good business. There needs to be better taxes, more money, more resources, so that we can get your products out there to more people and that you're being supported for doing the right thing in your local economy.
Okay, very briefly.
Yeah, just adding also up to what you asked, I think everybody who runs a fashion brand or who buys a product would be lying if not everybody is selling or buying into full shelves. Like everybody's full of clothes, basically. There are very few people who buy very less, and actually the best item you buy is the one you don't even buy. And so what I mean to say is without taking the fun away of people who like fashion and who like shopping and who like this this mood, we really need to focus on making the things right, because if we keep things in a cycle and if we design them wisely using renewable energy and smart fibers, organic fibers, or really recyclable fibers, we can have a mix of swapping, sharing, second-hand, but we can take them back, and that's a responsibility of the brand. I mean, we can definitely not wait for the government. I mean, Safia is waiting for almost 20 or 25 years for that to come. My brand's only 10 years, but she might agree that it will not come by itself. So it can be the consumers, but it has to come from the brands. So we are taking the responsibility, and in the end of the day, we have to collaborate to make this going, and that can be done only by supporting those brands who really want to do it, rather the ones who use greenwashing to just get the cheapest fiber out in the market again and again. Yeah.
I have to wrap it up at this point. Thank you so very much. You can follow these people, Carrie Bannigan, Safia Mini, Juliane Ziegler, and Henning Siedentop, so make sure you check out their work. So much interesting input. Thank you guys. I'm going to have to excuse you off the stage because we have our next panel that's going to come up. Thank you so much. Give a round of applause.